Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about OAS clawback and strategies to avoid it. And what I do is weekly based on what I'm working on. I usually highlight that topic. And today OAS clawback happens to be that topic because I'm working on a financial plan for clients and OAS came up. So let's talk about OAS and what it is. So OAS is old age security. And just a brief overview, it's a monthly payment that's available to individuals once you reach 65 years old. It's an important and integral part of the pension system. Unlike CPP, there's no employment history required. That's not a factor in eligibility. So whether you're working or non-working, you can qualify for OAS. Now, what's the qualification? The qualification has to do with your residence status. So if you're in Canada, you must be 65 years old, um, Canadian citizen or legal resident, and you must have lived there for at least 10 years after turning 18. And if you have lived there for at least 40 years, you get the full max amount that you would qualify for. Now, if you're outside of Canada, the eligibility isn't as lenient. You have to have lived here for at least 20 years after turning age 18. Okay, so let's talk about the clawback. And by the way, when I talk about OAS, OAS clawback is one of the things that people who are planning for retirement just they don't like it. I would probably say it comes second only to pulling money from your RSPs and finding out that's going to be taxed as ordinary income. A lot of people, that is probably the number one thing they despise when it comes to retirement planning. And second, a close second, I believe, is the OAS clawback. So let's look at this, the threshold and impact of OAS clawback. So the threshold for the OAS clawback, it starts at 90,997 in 2024, and you can get this information at canada.ca. And if you go over that amount, there's a 15% uh, income that gets clawback, and 15% is quite substantial, right? And once you hit $148,065 if you're age 65 and 74, then essentially everything that you would have received would have completely got clawback. If you're 75 and older, it's $153,771. And again, this is for this year. It changes annually. But just so you know, I mean, 15% is quite substantial. And some people say, well, I probably don't need that amount, or I probably don't have that amount. Well, your regular amount that you pull from your retirement may be lower than this threshold, but there may be years where circumstances arise where you have to pull more than you ordinarily need. And so in those circumstances, you will get hit with the clawback. Now, for some folks, you may be wondering, okay, I'm not there yet. I'm thinking about it. What are the things that contribute to the clawback? Quite frankly, you could have investment portfolios, be it RSPs or non-reg, especially RSPs, because it's treated as ordinary income. And you have as strong performances, right? So you have elevated incomes and you're now in higher tax brackets. So now you're more exposed to that clawback. Because if you have a bloated RSP, what has to happen is, when it comes to RIF, you have to take a minimum amount, and you could be also probably getting a pension, private and public, right? So, you have to balance those things in addition to the amount you're receiving from OAS. And this is where the potential for, the clawback. And in the last couple of years, last couple of years, in the last 10 years or so, quite a few individuals, 10, 15 years have had pretty significant, pretty decent returns, right? And because of that, they're now faced with this situation where they may not be pulling from their portfolios just yet, but they're now looking to do so. And in looking to do so, they realize, okay, doing this plan, I'm going to hit with a clawback, right? So today we're going to talk about a few strategies that you could do to mitigate the clawback. Okay, so one is you could delay OAS, right? If you delay OAS, a good advantage of that is 36% increase in payments if you delay to age 70, or 7.2 years for each year that is delayed. So there's this good financial benefit. So you might say, okay, delaying it gets higher. Okay, what's the benefit? Well, it allows you, for the time that you're delaying it from 65 to 70, potentially have early withdrawals for other accounts. Now, this works, of course, if your tax bracket between those years are much lower, because if you're pulling from your RIF, potentially what will happen is you could be paying substantial amounts of taxes. So if you're not working between those years, 65 and 70, it depends again on your situation. You may be able to pull some money from your RRIF or your RSPs, and what it allows for is a lower amount that's mandatory that you have to take once it converts to a RRIF, which is 871. So this, in conjunction with delaying OAS, might give you some buffer, give you some opportunity for planning, right? So that's one of the things you could do. The other thing you could do is maximize TFSA as early as possible, as much as possible. And again, a lot of times you want to do this when you have some runway. You don't just get to 865 or 70 and just immediately start doing that. There may be some room, but essentially you want to start planning your retirement much earlier so you can be strategic about how you do this. Because if you're utilizing TFSA, a lot of times what you will be doing, depending on your situation, if, for example, you have retired at age 65, you could pull from your RSP and put in the TFSA. And now when you get to age 70, when you're about to hit that threshold and you need money, that money that you pull from the RSP now is sitting in the TFSA and you could pull from the TFSA. So you may say, well, you're pulling money from the TFSA, so isn't that going to contribute to the income that I make that year? Actually, no. Because when you pull money from a TFSA, those withdrawals are tax-free, which makes the TFSA an excellent tool for retirement savings and an excellent tool to plan as it relates to the OAS clawback. So utilizing the TFSA as much as possible is a great way to go. Okay, now from some tax planning stuff. So if you're seniors, if you're a married couple at age 65 and older, you could transfer up to 50% of your income to your spouse with a lower tax rate, right? So that helps to get you below the threshold. And then if you have a spousal RSP, it could be useful for couples under 65. The higher income spouse contributes to the RSP of the lower income spouse receiving tax deductions at their higher rate, also lowering your income. So that's also an opportunity there as it relates to income splitting. You could use that to mitigate the clawback. Generally speaking, there are a few other things, but I try to keep my videos shorter. But the bottom line, in order to mitigate the clawbacks, what you really need to do is give yourself time to plan and position your assets in such a way that they are most tax efficient just generally, but also tax efficient in the sense that you will not be, hit with that clawback, because after all, it's something that should be coming to you. And why give it to CRA if there are tax efficient legal ways for you to do so? Hopefully this was helpful. The big thing, and I think the big takeaway here is, yes, there's some strategies, well, more or less there's some tactics here, but from a strategy standpoint, you want to start planning for retirement much earlier, and that way put your funds in an ideal position that you can be most tax efficient when you retire. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will catch you next week. Take care.